Okay, we're going to get started. So, as again, my name is Adam Sandman. It's my pleasure to present today the new features in Spira 6.0. During the presentation, everyone will be on mute, and when we get to the Q&A, we'll unmute the lines, and you can also use the chat window to write questions, which is probably easier, and I can read them out, and that would be great. So, let's get going. First of all, what we're going to talk about today? Well, we're first of all going to talk about quickly some of the changes. So we're going to highlight them in the presentation, the UI changes, some of the major features we have, the project templating, the document management, the risk management, and some of the admin changes which go with the templating. Where possible, I will try and outline which particular features are in SpiraTest versus SpiraTeam versus SpiraPlan, because some of the features are only available in some of the products. After the presentation, which should be about 10 minutes, we'll then go into the live application demo where you can see the features for real. After about 25 minutes of that, we'll then have time for Q&A. So first of all, in Spira, all versions SpiraTest, Team, and Plan, we have changed the user interface. And this was partly to improve the user interface as it currently stands for the users. It was also to support the new project templates. It was also to build room for some of the functionality coming later this year in 6.1 and 6.2. As we start to expand out the program and portfolio management features of Spira, we wanted to update the navigation now so that it's future-proofed, so you don't have to learn the navigation multiple times. So some of the changes will give you benefit today, and some of them will be there to make it easier to use the system in the future as we add more functionality. A couple of things to highlight is that we have changed the naming convention. Previously, we used to have project groups and projects. Those have now been renamed to programs and products. So you will see in this slide that we have a default program in the sample system of program 1, program 2. Those used to be called project groups. They have 3 hexagons as an icon. Underneath them are products, and they have a single hexagon icon. Functionality-wise, the products are the same as what they used to be as known as projects. The change was mainly to emphasize the fact that if you have multiple initiatives on a system, the requirements and all the test cases should live in the product, and then the different versions should be managed using releases. And the old naming convention, I think, confused people, and people often created multiple Spira projects when they meant to really have separate releases. And then the other piece you'll notice is in the navigation, it's now expandable, collapsible, so you can now have more programs and products visible more easily. There's also the cog icon to the right of it, so you can see the administration link directly. And then we also have a new section on templates. And we'll get to templates in a minute, but we have now got a separate view for templates as well. And then the artifact menu, previously we used to have 3 tabs, planning, testing, and tracking. We've now turned it into a vertical menu where the artifacts are all in a line with the icons. As we add more functionality at the program level and the product level, and we also add more options under this, this is giving us more flexibility for the future. We've also color-coded it, so it's easier to see at a glance where requirements are, where tests, where defects are as well. And on the right-hand side, we've changed slightly the user interface so that the user's profile is no longer the rightmost icon. It is one from the right. It still has largely the same functionality, except we've moved the My Time card under the user profile menu instead of on the top left. The top left icon with the product logo is now just used for the My page. And then there's the cogs, 3 cogs on the right. That's the administration section, and we'll get to the administration section in a separate slide. And then one other last change is that to get to the dashboards, we now have a separate button, separate from the main navigation bar. So if you want to go to a dashboard, you'll see that either a single hexagon or the triple hexagon will be visible right here next to the My Page link. So that way, you click on that button, will take you directly to the dashboard. So those are some of the overall UI changes, and we'll see them in the live application shortly. We also introduced project templates, and actually this slide is wrong. It should be product templates. So even I'm having a hard time getting used to some of the naming conventions. So the idea is that product templates are basically there to allow you to have customizations across multiple products. So previously in Spira, if you had 10 projects, as they were known then, if you wanted to have a custom field on them, they had 10 different versions of that custom field. If you had a workflow, there were 10 different workflows. When you set the product up, you could create based on existing, which was a great time saver. But if down the road you wanted to, let's say, add a custom field, you had to go through all 10 products and add the custom field 10 times. You also had to change the workflow in 10 different places. And so what we were finding as the deployments got bigger, it wasn't scaling from the administration standpoint. So we've now introduced product templates. And a template is a collection of customizations. So a lot of the things that you're used to seeing at the product level, for example, custom properties, incident workflows, requirement workflows, notification events, all of those items that previously were done per product are now done at the template level and can then be reused across different products. And when you create a product, you can now choose, and we'll show you this, whether to use an existing template or to create a new one from scratch. So you can still work the old way if you want every single product to have a unique template, but you now have the option of sharing templates. One thing this also gives us now is the ability to customize more of the fields. If you're familiar with Spira from many years ago, you'll know that we've always had the incident fields being customizable, the incident types, the incident statuses, the incident priorities, incident severities were all customizable. For requirements and test cases and tasks, most of these things were not customizable. You could add custom fields, but if you wanted to change the requirement priorities, or you wanted to change the requirement types, or the test case types or priorities, or something for tasks, you couldn't do that. They were limited to the ones we'd created. That's all been changed in this new version. Those are all customizable. You can change the color of the priorities. You can change the workflows. You can add types, remove types. And that's true for test cases, requirements, and tasks. Another major enhancement we've had in 6.0 is to implement workflow and the workflow and status system to documents. Previously, documents had types, so that's nothing new. They had folders, but there was no status for them. There was no workflow. There was no electronic signatures, and it was a feature that people had asked for a while, especially if you're managing requirements with a workflow. You might be working in a life science industry where you have to sign off. The documents that go with them also need to be reviewed. They need to be signed off, and they need to be locked, so they can't have new versions committed. So the workflow engine has been added to documents, so you can now do check-in and check-out. You can review documents. There's a new My Page widget. We'll show you all that, and that's also available in version 6. And everything so far is available in the SpiraTest and SpiraTeam and SpiraPlan editions. The next thing I'm going to show you is risk management, and that is unique to SpiraPlan. So if you have SpiraTest or SpiraTeam and you want to look at risk management functionality, you need to upgrade to the SpiraPlan license. And we can talk about how you do that during the Q&A, but basically you get a new license key and you can purchase the upgrade, and then you get the risk management functionality. Risk management is a whole separate module in the system. It comes with 2 different dashboard widgets, which you can see here. It lets you manage a risk register. It lets you manage a risk cube. It lets you define mitigations. It's fully integrated into the task system, so you can create tasks, i.e. action items, to reduce the risks, to treat the risks, and act on them. And it is a fully customizable workflowable item, so you can create risk workflows. You can customize the risk probabilities and impacts. You can customize how the exposure gets calculated. There's lots of flexibility, and it provides a full risk management capability into SpiraPlan. And the last thing we've done, which I alluded to earlier on, is as well as changing the navigation, top navigation bar, and because templates now have their own settings, it was time to automatically change the administration menus. So the menu has largely been the same for the last couple of major versions since SpiraTeam, I think version 3. So we've gone through a major overhaul of the administration. Administration is now broken down into 4 sections: templates, program, product, and system-wide. And because of that, we've changed the navigation and some of the screens, and we'll show you how that works. So it may take a little bit of time to get used to it, but once you're used to it, you'll like it. And the other thing is we've also made all the URLs in administration unique, so you can open up 2 products at once, 2 templates at once, and edit them in parallel. Previously, Spira was using sessions, so that if you change the product in one screen, the other browser tab would also pick up that change. So now you can work independently on multiple items, which was true for the rest of the application, but now it's consistent for the system, for the admin area. So that's the PowerPoint. So I'm going to jump out of PowerPoint now into the browser and bring up Spira. And so this is a live version of version 6.0.03. This is the current version available for download and cloud. And as you see, it looks a lot like the PowerPoint. So a couple of things I'm going to highlight. First of all, on the My Page, when you come in, there's an assign risk section, which is new. That's obviously only in SpiraPlan. So if you assign a risk to someone, that's going to be there. There's also an assign document section. If you assign a document to someone in the workflow, that's now going to be listed here under My Assigned Documents. Those are both two new widgets. And users can click on those links to go to a document or go to a risk. They also will get email notifications. So the email notifications and the RSS feeds are available in the risk and document modules, just like they would be everywhere else. We've also changed slightly some of the icons and the color scheme. So if you notice that there are some subtle changes you'll see in some of the overall user interface. But for the most part, the biggest changes you're going to come across will be in the navigation bar and in the administration. So let's go through some of the UI changes first. So the My page, which is the top left icon with the product icon, if it's SpiraTest, Team or Plan, it will have a slightly different shaped icon. All three of those now are simple buttons. There's no drop-down menu there. If you click on that, you go to My page. What that means, though, is that if you want to go to, for example, the My Time card, it's now available over here on the right under My Time card. So that's no longer under here. Similarly, administration used to be under the My page. The link is still here, and the My Time card link is still here, just for those who are used to that. Eventually, this may go away, but the main way to get to them now is under the user profile link. There's a My Time card, and administration is its own separate menu right here. And if you click on the three cogs, it will pop out. Now, the admin menu is now context sensitive. So depending on what I'm looking at, it will show different parts. So for example, I've got three sections visible currently. I've got the product administration. The product administration is because I've chosen a product. So sample empty product, that's the one that's visible. Because that's selected, I have product level administration. Because that product uses a template, there's a template level administration. And because I happen to be a system administrator, I also see system-wide functions. Now, if I wasn't a system-wide admin, this bottom section would not be visible. If I didn't have a product selected, I wouldn't see the product section. And if I didn't have obviously a product selected, I wouldn't even see the template either. If I was in the context of a program, let's say I was over here in the sample program 1, I would see, when I click on this link, I would see the program admin navigation available too. So it is context sensitive. So what does that mean? It also means that if you click on things like data synchronization, there's a system-wide link now. We've also added dashboards and administration at the product level. We'll come back to admin in a second. As well as the admin changes, I also mentioned the navigation has changed here. You can expand, you can collapse. There's the templates. These are all links, and the cog takes you to the admin for a version of something. Now, the artifact menu is available. This replaces the old planning, testing, tracking. It is expandable, collapsible also, which is nice. If you don't frequently use testing, you can hide that and not see it every day. If you're working on defects or risks mainly, you can do that. And we put the artifact icons here in the navigation. Reporting is its own separate button on the right, and the search is still available. We've just made it a bit smaller, so now it pops out and the reach and search is available. So it's a bit more usable and doesn't take up as much space when you're not using it. And that way on a mobile, we're not trying to cram as many things in. Now, I have selected a product. This one is not particularly populated, so we're going to choose Library Information System. That's the sample that comes with it. As I mentioned, I'm going to use the term product instead of project. If I do use project, it's just because of habit, and it means the same thing. So don't take that as anything meaningful. We're going forward with everything here as a product. Now, previously in Spira, if you clicked on this product link, it would go to the dashboard. It doesn't do that anymore. It just changed the product selection. So the ID changes in the URL, and the selection changes. If you want to go to a dashboard, you now click on this button, and that's what will open up the dashboard. And a single hexagon means it's the product dashboard. If I was to choose a program, say sample program 1, that's the program dashboard right here. So the program dashboards haven't changed a lot. This is an area we'll be focusing on in the future. The program dashboards essentially are the same as before, except for the new button to get to them. The artifact menu for programs is also the same, where you have planning board, releases, and incidents. Haven't changed, but they're now under their own artifact menu. As we add more program functionality, you'll see more artifacts appearing here. So let's go back into the product level. Okay, on the dashboard, you will notice there are some new elements. The two main widgets you'll see that are new are the risk summary and the open risk register. So the risk summary is the risk cube. It shows you the color coordinations between probability and impact, and essentially the lighter the color, the lower the risk in terms of its exposure. So that means it's less likely to happen, and if it does happen, it's not as critical. So for example, this risk here would be negligible and rare. However, if something's very likely to happen, and it's really bad if it does happen, that's going to appear in the top right in the darkest color. And you can customize these colors, but it goes from bottom left to top right. And the number will show you how many risks are in that section. If I click on that, it's going to take me into the risk section and apply a filter. And so you'll see that's the one risk. It's critical and certain, and that's its name. You can see in the tooltips, you can see the mitigations and action items. There's also inline graphs for risk management as well. If I go back to the project homepage, as well as the risk cube is also the risk register. The register shows us the top, in this case 5, but it is customizable, risks by exposure. Exposure is the number calculated by multiplying the probability and the impact. So the highest exposure is the one that's most likely to happen and the most severe if it does happen. And these links also have tooltips. The tooltip shows you the name, description, and the action items. The other widgets on the homepage are largely the same. We haven't made substantial changes there in version 6. There will be more changes coming. We have made one naming change that in the release selector, what we used to call iterations, we've now changed to sprints. So the original methodology was based on extreme programming and some of the other agile methodologies. As it seems that more and more people are using Scrum terminology, we decided to switch over to the standard Scrum terminology for sprint. So before we go into the rest of the navigation and administration, we're going to do a deep dive into risks since we're right here. The risks, as I mentioned, is a feature only available in SpiraPlan. So as well as these two dashboard widgets on the My page, you go into the artifacts section, and that's where you have risks. And the risks have a full list page like this, where you can see the list of all the risks. They are organized by probability and impact. So if I want to find the highest probability, I could sort. These are certain, these are possible, these are rare. You can sort by impact. You can filter. I only want the certain risks. I only want the ones that are maybe critical. And if we go on this value here, there's also the exposure, and the exposure is the number. So if we sort by exposure, we get a composite score of the two. So the one with the highest exposure is most likely and most severe in composite. And so let's go ahead and create a new risk. So how does a risk management work? You can obviously filter by any of the fields. You can also filter by any of the fields here. You can show and hide columns. So all of the same functionality you're familiar with in Spira exists here as well. You can do inline editing. There's also a workflow engine. So if you don't want to do inline, you can prevent users from doing that. So let's go ahead and create a new risk. So if I create a new risk, like the incident page, it goes to a new page where I put the risk in. So let's go type a new risk in. Let's say there is a risk that the system won't support TLS 1.3. So the risk is there's a new security standard coming out, and perhaps the system won't support it. And the risks have different types. So we've built the system to have 5 preloaded types. You can customize the types, so don't feel like you're limited to what we have. We have business risks, technical risks. This is a technical risk. And initially, it comes in as identified, and we can say what component it affects. Let's say it affects administration, and that's all we have to do right now. And we'll just put in a short description that TLS 1.3 is the emerging SSL standard. We need to make sure we can support it. I don't think we are able to right now. So that's a risk. Hit save. So that's a risk. And then we want to so we would assign it to someone. Let's say assign it to me, system admin. I don't want to log in, log out, so I won't assign it to someone else, but you could. And then in the workflow, you might decide to analyze the risk or reject it. Reject it means no, TLS 1.3, it's too far out. We don't want to track that right now. Or analyze it. Let's go a bit deeper in this. So let's go a bit deeper. Okay, so when I make it analyzed in the current workflow, it's going to ask me to rate the risk. So I can basically rate it as it's going to affect the next release. And I also feel like it's going to be, let's think, it's pretty likely we're going to need to support TLS 1.3 because it's a standard that's coming. I would say it's almost certain, but let's say it's likely. The impact is if it doesn't work, eventually people aren't going to be able to log in the system. So let's say it's critical. Hit save. And because we've given it a probability and an impact, it's now rated the exposure of this risk. So we can now sort on it, it appears in the risk register, and it's going to be categorized based on how important that risk is to us. The next step would then be to evaluate the risk. And I can set a review date. So when we evaluate it, I want it to be evaluated by that date. Hit save. And then the other thing we could do now is start to add mitigations. So what are the mitigations to the TLS? Let's add a mitigation. Let's say that, for example, one mitigation would be to do some research on our dev environment with the TLS 1.3 beta, libraries or something that we can do to verify that. And we want to come back to that by the 30th of May. It's safe. So that's a mitigation. So mitigations are things you can do to mitigate the risk. Another thing might be to migrate to a platform where the SSL is completely outsourced, so we don't have to worry about it. And so you can have different mitigations, and maybe that's a more complex mitigation. So we'll move that one into June. So that way you can track different mitigations for the same risk. That's safe. And as well as that, we might also want to then build an action plan. So mitigations are items to mitigate the risk and with review dates, and there's also comments, which is familiar from the rest of the system. However, you also can do action plans. And an action plan, unlike a mitigation, is actually a task, and we'll go into the standard task tracking feature of Spira. So if you're already using tasks to manage your code review tasks, your technical development tasks, just becomes another task that can be managed. So it lets you track the effort, track the completion, and it's a way of tracking the actual, someone doing something specific. So whereas a mitigation is documenting how we're going to mitigate it, the adding of a task is actually carrying out that mitigation. So let's say one task would be, from a development standpoint, would be build out a TLS 1.3 test bed, and that's development. I want to assign that. It's pretty critical, and I'm going to assign that to Fred and hit save. So now an email is going to go to Fred. He's got a task on his planning board. And Fred's going to need to then build up the test bed, and then once it's done, we can then review it. And so you can create multiple tasks. Another task might be, once the test bed is built, might be a PM task to actually have someone use the test bed and actually verify that that risk is mitigated. And then at some point you feel like the risk is being handled, you can now mark it as treated. And when you mark it as treated, it's now open risk. And open risks largely stay open until they are not just mitigated, but actually closed. And so, for example, in this case, you keep this risk, unlike a requirement or a task, you keep this open, so the tasks get completed. So someone might build a test bed, someone might review the TLS standards, do the development, make sure it works. And at some point, the risk is not just treated, but actually solved. There is no risk because we've actually tested on this new version. It works completely. There's a new task, there's a new requirement, all done, and then the risk gets closed. So unlike requirements and unlike tasks and defects, risks will typically stay open for a long time, and that's the way they're meant to be. So the mitigations and the tasks will get closed and added and removed. It's the risk itself will stay open until ultimately it's fully addressed, or just rejected that we, as a business society, it's not actually a risk. And so that's the risk functionality. In general, there are some standard features you'll see on risks, like you'll see anywhere else in Spira. There is the ability to print them and export them out. There's also the ability to email them. You can subscribe to risks, you can watch them as a follower, you can obviously create new ones directly here, you can clone them. And in the reporting section, we've also added a full set of risk reports as well. So there are risk detail reports and risk summary reports. So if you want to run a report on risks, get a risk register in an Excel form, you can do that. Just choose Excel. And then I don't bother filtering it, but you could, and just create a report. And there's my risk report. If you want to have things like the mitigations and the tasks, you would need to do the detail report in MS Word, for example. Great. Okay, fine. I don't want to save that, so let's get rid of that. Great. So that's the risk functionality. There's a lot more to risks, but that's just an overview of how it works. Now, also, when we get into the administration, I will show you some of the risk admin section as well. So that was the main feature of the risks. Now, in terms of the core system, a lot of the other chainers are more subtle and are in the administration, but the one other feature that we do have that's for the end users will be in the documents. So before we go into admin and do a deep dive in the templates and the customizations and the workflows, let's look a little bit at documents. So documents have changed a little bit. In this new version, we made an aesthetic change where we've actually added color-coded icons. When we switched from the old icons to the new high-res icons in version 5.4, they all went monochrome, and we found it was a little hard to see things. So we've now gone for a more modern look with colored icons, but still retain the more modern wireframe shape. Now, in terms of the functionality, we still have file names of documents, we still have types, we still have the author, the editor, and all the stuff you're familiar with, but we've added a new feature, which is the status field. So the status field drives the document. So when you add a document, it might come in, for example, as this one. This is a draft document. When something's added, it becomes a document that's draft. And now you have a workflow that goes with that document. So let's imagine it's a draft document. It's come in, and we want to then review it. When you review it, you can assign it to someone. In this case, it's been assigned to Fred. It then appears on Fred's My Page. So Fred gets an email saying, you've been assigned a document to review, and Fred can then review it. We still have the tags functionality that hasn't changed, but we can also make it so that when you move to different statuses, different fields become required. So you might add a comment. We also added comments to documents, which was new in this version. So as part of the reviewing functionality, you might want to add a comment. For example, this wireframe needs to be updated. Hit save. And you'll notice here we still have the ability to have different versions. One thing you can do then is you can actually say approve document. And when you approve a document, some of the fields become read-only. And I also have to add a comment. So comment would be uploaded new version. Also, it's now requiring a new version. So it's actually forcing me to download it, make a change, check out the document, and check in a new version. So we've now got the ability to enforce someone to actually change the document. So let's just pretend I'm going to upload a new version. Let me, just to save doing that, I'm going to download what we have. I'll save it onto my file system. And I'll upload a new version. I'll just upload the same one. And it's version, say 1.2, make the active version. Upload, got a new document, got a new version, great, hit save. There you go, now it's saved. So it's now enforced that. And once it's approved, you'll notice that the status has changed. And if I move it to the next status, which will be complete, I can check out to put it back to get a new version, or I can mark it as completed, hit save. And now everything's grayed out, and I can't change the version. I can't make another version active. So 1.2 is now locked as the final version. So that's the other thing. Previously, you could always change the versions. You could approve something, it was reviewed, but then, oh, well, I can change the version. That makes no sense. So now you've got control over who can approve something, when it's approved, what can be done to it, and then the document can be finalized, and now it's the final live version. So everything that's linked to this document, for example, we're linking, I think, requirements to it, if I remember correctly. Yep, there's a requirement. That requirement links to that document. So that requirement now has the certainty that when this document is approved and completed, the version isn't going to change. And so there's a lot of functionality here beyond which I've just shown you. You can also enforce someone to check in and check out a document. You can make it so that you can't even see the other versions. So there's an option to only show the latest version, in which case this version tab is hidden, and I can only open the document from this link. So that way, if you don't want people to see the old versions because maybe they want to be hidden for some reason, perhaps they're confidential or some information shouldn't be in there, or they just don't want people getting confused and opening an old version, you can actually then hide that so only the latest version is visible. And all of that, plus the risk management, plus all the templating, is in the documentation, is in the administration section. So let's go there next. So this is the biggest set of changes that the admin's going to see, is that the menu, as I said, is broken out. We also have highlighted the section you're currently in. So I'm in documents. So guess what? Documents is highlighted. So things like that make it much easier to see what you're doing. So let's go into administration now. And before we jump into some of the template things, a few features we've made in general. One is that we've added admin dashboards. So for the sysadmin, these are all the system administration functions. And in terms of what's available, they're largely the same as before. You can edit the products, the programs, you can change the active sessions, the requests, the roles, system-wide settings, integration settings, reporting. They're all the same settings you saw before, but now they're all grouped under system. The one new editor is the edit templates, because we didn't have templates. But the one other thing we did is we've created an admin dashboard. And this is really nice because one of the challenges before for an admin was you had lots of things to manage. So as an admin, the most common things people would do is they would want to create an account and request one. They would log in incorrectly 10 times and get logged out. And that was previously on different screens. And they are still different menu entries. So if you go over here into the handy left-hand side menu, so we've got the same menu that's over here over here when you're in an admin to avoid having to click left and right. And you'll notice that you can still do things like active sessions, pending requests, people are locked out. That's still the same. The difference is, whereas before you had to remember to go to these sections, now you can see in the dashboard, and then there's these handy links. So if you see someone locked out, you can go view all, and it will take you to the place to unlock them. If you see someone's got a request for an account, you can go straight to this page and do that. The other thing is when you're doing data synchronization with things like Jira or Microsoft Teams system, Azure DevOps is now called, or GitLab, you have to see the synchronization status, and you want to know, is it up to date, is it running? But then if things don't work, you have to then look at the log to see what were the events that were causing it to fail. Well, that meant going between two screens, Alt Tab, Alt Tab. Well, now you've got one screen where you can see the event log of the events and the synchronization all in one place. There's also handy links here to the active sessions, the license key, the product type, and some other things as well. So there's handy links here for the sysadmin. And then in terms of the templates, which is another core change, if we go into the edit templates section, the big thing you'll do now is have templates. And when you create a project, you will be able to choose whether to create a new template or an existing one. And templates basically have a name and an active flag. That's pretty much what they have. Most of the rest of the things you do with templates is done in the administration menu. So if you want to edit the name of the template, you do it here, make it active or not. But other than that, almost everything else you'll do will be in this template section. And if you want to get to the template navigation by itself, there is a template dashboard, and that gives you a list of the name of the template, all the products that use the template. So if you change a template, you want to make sure that you're not impacting someone else's product. So that's one of the big changes. Before, if you were to change, say, a workflow or a custom field, you knew it only affected your product, and you knew that was okay. Now, if you've got a template that's being used by multiple products, in this case 2, you need to make sure that both those people are okay with you changing it. Otherwise, you might want to split the product off to its own template first. So what can you do at the template level? So pretty much everything that you used to do at the product level is now being done at the template level. So the defects, priorities and severities and statuses and types and workflows, those are all there, the task, workflows, but there are some new things. First of all the risk fields. So risks are now available. So if you want to change the impacts for the risks, we've got by default 4 different ones with 4 different colors, 4 different scores, and these score values get multiplied by the probability scores, and that's what gives you the exposure. So if I look at the probabilities, there's 5 probabilities. They also have colors, they also have scores, and they have names. You can change these, and then they go together along with the types to give you the workflow. So this is the type of the risks, these are the workflows, and you've got the workflow right here. Everything's now one click away with a new pop-out. And if you click on the steps button, you can now see these are the steps in my risk workflow, the identification of a risk, the analysis. The analysis then goes to the analysis stage, then it's evaluated and then evaluated, and then it's treated. And once it's treated, it becomes open. And if you want a different set of names or a different flow, that's entirely up to you. We base this on the Prince2 standard for risks, but obviously there are different standards out there, so you can adjust it. Similarly for the documents, those have a status now. They've always had a types. This is the status, checked in, checked out, approved, completed, etc. You can change those. If you go to the workflow, there's also a document workflow. Again, draft documents get reviewed, under review, approved, rejected, and at some point they get completed. So you've got this full workflow for document management. You can customize that also. And then as well as those which are largely new, we've also added customizations to some of the existing artifacts. So previously requirements, they did have a workflow, but the types and priorities were not changeable. You can now change the requirement types. And because they're changeable, one of the things that's really important is this has steps. You can now have, for example, multiple types having steps. So originally, only use cases had steps. You can now say that your user stories have steps. Why not? You can have acceptance criteria have steps. So you can define steps on any of the requirement types. Similarly, for test cases, they have priorities, they have types. Priorities very similar to the ones on defects, but the types, these are all the test case types we now have. They can share a workflow, or they can have unique workflows. The one important aspect is you can now mark which ones are exploratory. So you might decide that both exploratory tests and session tests, which are both really just different names for the same thing, they could both be left separately named, and you could have them both be marked as exploratory types. We're going to be adding more types in the future, like we're going to have a BDD flag, and that's going to appear here as well. And then that will be an option on the acceptance tests. So that's some of the customization changes we've done. That's in terms of the test cases, the requirements, the documents, the risks. The tasks also have types and workflow. So just for completeness, I'll show you those. These are different types, things like code review are there, pull requests are there. We're going to be adding more functionality in the future to automate some of the code review and pull requests, tying into the source code module. For right now, they're just different task types. Custom properties also now are at the template level, custom lists are at the template level, but apart from that, they work the same as before. One other thing we did change is notification events. Those were previously at the product level, they're now at the template level. Notification templates, though, used to be system-wide, and we've now made those at the product level. So you can now have different notification templates for different product templates. So if you have all of your client products for one client and you want to have a different email template with a different header, different footer, you can now change the look and feel of them based on the product. So that's some of the things that are now available at the template level. And that means that the product level administration, so if you're a product manager, a product owner, there's less things that are unique to your product. Most things are done by the template. There are things that do stay the same are data synchronization, data tools, associations, the change history, the source code, setup, membership, components, and planning options. They still are at the product level. They're not by template. So if you have two products using the same template, these things will still be unique per product. Now, there's also a product dashboard, and the product dashboard is really helpful because that lets you see the product level information as an admin. So this is not the product dashboard that you see as a product end user, like the tester, the QA manager. This is the product admin. They want to see everything for this product and they want to administer it. So things like the components, the membership, source code, data synchronization for the product, these are all available right here. And that's nice if you have, for example, Jira turn on in your project, but TFS turn on a different project. You only see Jira here, you don't see TFS. Also, previously, if you were the project owner, you couldn't see data synchronization, only the sysadmin could. And that meant if things weren't working correctly, you didn't know that things weren't working correctly, now you can see right here. And you can actually customize the product level settings for the data synchronization without being a sysadmin. So it makes it a bit less work for the sysadmin. Also, the most recent changes are right here. So if someone's made some changes or deleted something, it's going to be right here versus having to hunt for it. So again, trying to make things easier for the administrators across the board. So thanks again for attending, and have a great rest of the day.